It's time for you. It's time for you.
It's time for Imperial, a new luxury car with everything standard from an interior by Mark Cross to electronic fuel injection.
I'm telling you that dreams come true.
It's time for Imperial, with a basic limited warranty twice as long as any other American luxury car.
Come on, baby, it's time, time, time. It's time for you.
It's time for Imperial.
Hello friends and neighbors, and welcome back to Chase Classic Motors. My name's Ross.
And I'm Eric.
And we serve and protect great cars. And not just great cars, but also we
Some
love
pretty terrible ones too.
Some terrible ones, some ones that are forgotten and forsaken by history, and boy, we've got one today. Because Eric, this is the 1981 Chrysler Imperial. It's actually your 1981 Chrysler Imperial.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, this car found me. Sometimes I suspect I'm the only one that's willing to work on something that everyone else is like, oh, get it away from me. And so these cars find me, and so here it is.
And this car does have that reputation. I believe this is more of a J platform, almost like a modified M body platform.
To tell you the truth, I really don't know. When I look at the front fenders and the doors on this car, they sure look like a Cordoba or a Murata to me. And of course, this car has, the transverse torsion bars in the front, like an M body, an F body, or a J body would. So I'm sure it shares an awful lot of components with all of those cars.
But this was Chrysler's return to premier luxury. And you can tell with some of the details and the features that were created for this car, they had high hopes for this car. And even though it was a monumental commercial flop, there's a lot to be taken in here. And we want to share this car with you because it's a pretty special car for the time. It has some really interesting appointments, even right down to the design. I mean, this car was designed primarily to compete with the Cadillac Seville with that Bustleback look that was popular and trendy in the late 70s.
Yeah, this is a Bustleback like the Seville or the Lincoln Continental. Of course, we had that Eldorado in here that also had a totally different fuel injection system in it. And these two cars feel very much kind of like they were competing with each other, the Eldorado and this Imperial. So yeah, I mean, it's a product of its time, I suppose.
It is, and this is a time when we already knew that Chrysler was in deep financial straits, and yet, this was the car, I think they rolled the dice on this car a lot, because you can tell with the investment that was made, with the styling, with the interior features, with the move into electronic fuel injection that this car does have, but you'll tell us more about that shortly. There was an expectation that they were going to sell up to 30,000 of these cars a year. And this was the equivalent of like $65,000 in 1981.
It's a very expensive car.
Very expensive, and you will see with some of the appointments that this car had. Again, we're talking about basically a mid to full size personal luxury coupe with unique and very stylish detail that was rear wheel drive, electronic fuel injection, bathes you in luxury, and is getting over 20 miles to the gallon. That was their hope. And yet, it achieved it, and it also fell flat on its face.
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about how did you come to acquire this car?
Well, this car was owned by the father of a friend of a friend. I've known about this exact car for probably 6 or 7 years. The father that bought it was a bit of a Chrysler collector. He had some other cars. His baby was, I think, a 67 or so Newport. And he had this, and he had a couple of other things. He had an 82 Dodge Diplomat, Slant 6 that was in pretty good shape. And about, 5 or 6 years ago, his daughter contacted me to have a look at this car. He hadn't owned it for very long and just bought it and said it wasn't running right. And I was like, oh, wow, does it still have the fuel injection on it? Let me go take a look at it. So I went over to his house to take a look at it, and there it was, this green Chrysler Imperial with about 50,000 original miles on it. I'm sure it's original because the interior is pretty nice. The brake pedal isn't all worn out. You open up the door and the hinges don't fall like they're all worn out and things like that.
And it's surprisingly solid, even though this car, I believe in the photos that you sent me, was buried up to its wheel wells in mud.
Well, yeah, I'll get there. So anyway, I took a quick look at it. It ran at the time, but not well. And so I was like, okay, well, you're gonna have to tow it to a place where I can work on it, and I'll see if I can do something there. And he said, okay. And then somehow our schedules just never lined up again, and I don't think this car was that high of a priority of his anyway. Like I said, the Newport was really kind of his baby, so he just wasn't able to get around to it. About 5 years ago, the guy that owned it passed away, and his daughter called me, I don't know, 6 months ago, something like that.
Yeah.
She'd inherited all of his property, and the township was giving her a hard time about the cars on the property. And she asked me if I might be interested in buying the Imperial. And I said, well, yeah, I guess I'm interested. Let me come and take a look at it. And yes, it had been the first time I'd seen the car in like 7 years, and it had 2 feet of grass growing up all around it, and it was sunk in the mud up to the bottom of its wheels. So that like the bottom sidewall of all the tires was sunk right into the mud. It looked like it had been there since the last time I'd seen it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this poor car. You know, for those of you that might be watching this who don't live in Michigan, you park a car here in Michigan over Michigan mud for 4 or 5 years, and it will almost always rot the floorboards away to nothing. I don't know what it is about our mud here, because I mean, I've seen cars that were parked in, like, we went to Collier's in South Carolina. Some of those cars have been parked over that mud for 30, 40 years, and the floorboards in those cars are still solid. So what it is about Michigan mud, I don't know, but I've had cars parked in my backyard for 4 or 5 years, and the floorboards were solid when I parked them, and they're gone now.
I mean, this was fine yesterday, but then this morning we had a bit of a shower, and now look at it.
But yeah, that is something I think unique to this part of the world, our geography, because
Yeah.
cars just do not last here. Our weather
don't.
destroys them. So this poor car, this 81 Imperial, was sitting out there another 6 years since you'd seen it.
Yep.
Since you'd seen it last.
Yep.
And you managed to drag it out of the mud. I wish
Well,
I'd been there to film it.
Yeah, I didn't offer her a heck of a lot of money for it at that point because I thought, well, this is a parts car now.
Yep. It's
So
gonna be rotted just like you described. That's what you were expecting. And
that's
what did
exact.
you find,
So yeah,
though?
well, I offered her enough money that I could maybe part it out because I did. If I have to kill this car, I'd want it to help other cars to live. So enough money to part it out and then junk it and not lose money. So that's what I gave her for it. Took me a couple of hours to break the car free from the ground and get it in the trailer and tow it back here. I towed it right here, we got it here, and I was finally able to take a decent look underneath it, and I was shocked. The floorboards are rock solid. I don't know how this car survived that, but it did. Now I've heard that these Imperials are made from thicker gauge steel than the M bodies and the F bodies and the J bodies, so I don't know if that's true, although like you were saying, as you open and close doors and the deck lid and things, it does feel more solid than any other of those rear-wheel drive cars in production at the time. And going around this car a little bit as I have, I've noticed there's more bracing and structure in various spots that you don't see on the J bodies and the M bodies and F bodies too. So, you know, there's something to that, I think.
Well, go ahead and open up the door and let's show the audience exactly what we found that just shocked the living daylights out of us.
Well, and another thing, when I went to go look at the car, I was very surprised to see that it actually is very complete. It's not missing any trim, it's not missing any glass, none of the glass is broken. The interior is in pretty darn nice shape. You know, the worst parts of the interior, a little bit of sun, catching in a couple of areas, cooked a few spots, and then all of the Chryslers from this period. The felt that wraps around the plastic on the A pillars and the B pillars just falls apart. So this car needs, you know, the fabric there, it needs a headliner, and I think the dash is a little stained, a little nasty looking from the sun, and the steering wheel's cracked. But other than that, the interior is surprisingly nice. The leather is nice too. Marked cross leather. This isn't Corinthian. And it's amazing how well this car is held up.
And not only that, but you put the key in it and turned it and all the gauges lit up.
Yeah, I hooked a battery up to it and the car doesn't run, but it seems like everything else works. The power windows worked, the power locks worked, and yeah, the instrument cluster lit up and it told you, you know, how many miles were on the car and how much gas is in the tank approximately. I think that's correct. I don't really know yet. We'll get there.
And this is a relatively low mileage car.
Yeah, it's just a little over 50,000 according to odometer. And like I said, I'm sure that's correct because otherwise you'd see more wear on the brake pedal. The door hinge pins would be all worn out and they're not.
So needless to say, this car was worth every penny of the
I
offer
had-
you made to the owner.
Yeah, and she's a good enough friend. I think I'm gonna have to give her more money.
Do you accept cash?
You're a good man. Better than me, that's for sure. Well, now that we've taken a look,
I kind of believe in karma, believe it or not. So
now that we've looked at the car in all of its glory.
I want to point out one other thing.
Yes.
Goodyear Arriva tires. This car had 4 Goodyear Arriva tires with it when I got it. The other 2 on that side are Arrivas. That's actually the spare. I don't remember what that is, but I have another Arriva for it. That's a factory tire. Now I'm sure these are not the tires it left the factory with, because Goodyear Arrivas didn't last very long. If you actually used them as, you know, a daily driver, they usually only last like 30,000 miles or so. So these have been replaced once, but those are original equipment tires. It left the factory with Goodyear Arrivas, and that's what it came to me with. Those tires are probably, you know, 35 years old or something like that.
Well, Eric, I gotta say, as a barn find, this is a pretty spectacular deal.
Yeah, well, and to be perfectly honest, one of the reasons why we do this stuff, fixing old cars like we do, is I really like the old technology. I think I'm on a little bit of a quest to vindicate the old technology. I kind of hate it when people take off drum brakes and put on discs, and they take off, you know, points and put on electronic ignition and all that stuff, and they talk bad about some of the misunderstood technology of the time, like that Cadillac Eldorado we worked on, you know.
That's season 1.
And what those are is it's just a little metal switch that opens and closes when it's exposed to a magnet. The magnets are right here on this little rotor gizmo inside the distributor. So one of these is going to be to fire the corner fuel injectors, and the other one is going to be to fire the middle fuel injectors. Yeah, that I'm sure most shops, if they took on that project at all, they would have thrown a carburetor at it rather than trying to fix the original fuel injection.
Absolutely.
One of these days I'm going to do a video on lean burn, and I know everyone hates lean burn, but in my experience, you know, if you want your car to make power, yes, you have to get rid of the lean burn, because you'll never be happy with the way it advances ignition timing. But if you want to be reliable, lean burn's probably better than the aftermarket ignition systems they're putting on now. I can't tell you how many of those Chrysler ignition modules we've replaced here. We've actually replaced more of those here than ballast resistors. I have yet to see a ballast resistor go bad. I've had to replace 2 of those Chrysler electronic ignition modules here. You know, brand new ones in the retrofit kit for people that are taking off the lean burn and putting this on.
Right out
you
of
know,
the box.
these Chinese parts are junk. If you ask me, what am I going to trust to get me from A to B, lean burn or a brand new Chinese computer? I'm going to go with the lean burn.
What happened to you, China? You used to be cool.
Hey, China's still cool.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox a little bit.
But this is not a lean burn car.
No.
This has something pretty unique, pretty special, and something that absolutely terrified Chrysler techs in the early 80s. In fact,
A lot of them.
A lot of them just refused to even work on these cars. In fact, these cars failed so spectacularly because of this fuel injection that the Chrysler dealerships were paying up to, what, $3,000 per car per recall?
Well, that was Chrysler paying them to put the carburetors on these cars.
Got you. But that being said, when these cars were brand new, Chrysler came out with this novel approach to electronic fuel injection. And what I'd like to do now is to have you take us through some of the things that made it so ungainly and therefore challenging to the vintage car community. One of the reasons why you just don't see these set up this way with the original fuel injection is because of what you're going to talk about now.
So, a little bit of backstory as I understand it. When Lee Iacocca was working for Ford, he was always a bit jealous of Chrysler's engineering. And remember, that would have been the 60s. So in the 60s, Chrysler had Hemis, you know, literally a racing engine that they just detuned a little bit and were selling to regular people in their muscle cars. In the 60s, Chrysler also had their turbine car program, which is incredible. You know, very cutting edge stuff. So when Iacocca finally came to Chrysler in the late 70s and early 80s, he wanted a flagship car, because you know, some of Iacocca's other successes at Ford were the Lincoln Continental And so he wants something like that from Chrysler. His idea was, well, let's bring back the Imperial, which, by the way, this is not a Chrysler Imperial, this is an Imperial. So let's bring back their flagship car, the Imperial, and let's use some of that awesome Chrysler engineering and make this car something really special. And that's why they did this fuel injection system in-house when they could have, adapted a Bendix system or something like that, taken the system Cadillac was using and changed it a little bit and put it on here or something like that. They wanted to do something in-house. And as such, this is a really weird fuel injection system. So the Cliff's Notes version, it doesn't have any fuel injectors.
Well, that's a good start.
Matter of fact, I think I got a unit over here I can show you. This is something that I just
fuel
found.
Fuel injection system without fuel injectors.
Yeah, this is something I found in a junkyard years ago, and I pulled it off of that car just for the heck of it. Just because I thought it was cool, I wanted to look at it and see how it works. So I don't know if these parts are any good. This is, like I said, this is just a piece of junk I pulled off of a car to pick apart years and years ago. So these parts may not be any good, but I was just fascinated by it. So these little U-shaped rails here, that's basically your fuel injectors. Those rails just have holes in them. And so fuel comes up from the gas tank into this unit. There's a low pressure fuel pump in the gas tank that brings fuel up to here. This is like a high pressure pump, and then fuel comes through there into those ports, because they're not really injectors, and goes into the engine from there. And the system varies fuel trim just with this motor. The motor spins faster or slower, basically, to give you more or less fuel. And I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. There's actually two sets of injectors in here. One set is for regular cruising, and there's another set that comes on, under high load or wide open throttle and stuff like that. So it's a funny system, but because you don't have injectors like poppet valves that open and close, they just spray all the time. I think it was for that reason that Chrysler was afraid of hydrolocking the engine with fuel. If something happened and the engine stopped, but the fuel pumps are still running, you can imagine it would just hose fuel into the engine and hydrolock it. So for that reason, I think they added this pesky gizmo right here. That is the automatic shutdown module. And it does that thing's job to kill basically all power to the entire fuel system if it senses anything it doesn't like.
And that was to keep the system, or to prevent the system from flooding the engine compartment or the engine with fuel in the event that it stalled.
Yep.
Wow, so no wonder this didn't quite catch on.
Well, if it worked well and reliably, in theory it should be an okay thing.
I'm guessing it didn't work reliably.
No, it's got a bad reputation for a fairly good reason. Now, once again, I like to defend stuff like this, because I think it probably works better than people realize. People like to, point the finger and laugh and call things a failure, even when a lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. If you talk to someone about something like lean burn or something like that and say, well, have you ever really messed with it? Do you have any real experience with it? They usually tell you no. They're just regurgitating what they've heard 100 times from everyone else. So, and a lot of that I think is this too. People didn't understand it. They didn't know how it worked. They didn't bother to figure out how it worked. And so when it had a problem, they just said, oh, you need to take it off and put a carburetor on. And I think eventually Chrysler just said, fine, we'll give you a carburetor kit. Now, I used to work with a guy when I was a teacher at Baker College, and he had one of these Imperials, and it had the original fuel injection on it, and he had 180,000 miles on that car.
To be fair, Tim was a Chrysler dealer tech at this time servicing these vehicles.
Yes, but Tim, we probably should get him on this show one of these days to talk about these cars. He's a wonderful guy to talk to. I mean, I think he might literally be a genius.
And he himself is also a college-level performance and mechanic instructor.
Mm-hmm. I remember he had one of these Imperials, and I was really interested in it as I was talking to him, and he told me that because he loved these cars so much at the time, any Anytime one of these Imperials had come in to the dealership for the retrofit to the carburetor, there were 1 or 2 other techs that would do the retrofit, and they would take all the parts off and give them to him. So he ended up with a lot of parts. And another thing they would say is a lot of times during the retrofit, they would find the thing that had actually failed, causing the car not to run right. And they're like, it's kind of silly to do the retrofit now because I could just replace this or that or whatever and make it run now, but the customer wants the retrofit, so here we go. So, and it's a weird system in some other ways too. It's definitely more complicated than the system that was on the Cadillac we did, because this has a lot more sensors to it. When they call it EFI, electronic fuel injection, they're not just whistling Dixie. There are a lot of sensors on this thing, although strangely enough, no map sensor, which I think is really weird. You might recognize this computer here. It looks a lot like a lean burn or electronic fuel control computer, but if it was, it would have a sensor here. That was what a modern technician might call a map sensor. Chrysler called it a vacuum transducer, but it was for detecting engine load. How open is the throttle compared to how hard is the engine working, which is a pretty important PID for a lot of modern cars. And the older Chryslers had it, and this one didn't, which I think is crazy. If you have one of these Imperials and you want to get it working, I very highly recommend that you find one of these. This is how I learned about this car. This is the training manual for the dealership technicians back in the early 80s when these cars were new, and it tells you how the fuel injection in this car works and how to diagnose it. Almost everything I know about how this car works, I read in here.
Having the right information is key.
Yeah, you have to. You're not going to get this kind of information out of an aftermarket service manual.
We are very quickly and building up an entire library of factory service information for various makes and models, popular and forgotten classics like this one behind you.
Yeah, and that goes for any classic car that anyone watching this program might own. Don't settle for an aftermarket service manual. If you've got an old car and you want to keep it on the road because you can't find anyone to work on it, you've got to go on eBay or whatever and find the factory service manual. And if you've got, especially if you've got some funny system like this, try to get a dealership technician training information from the classes they would have taken when they were learning about this stuff. That's very helpful. And YouTube is good for that too. A lot of the Master Tech Chrysler training videos are on YouTube. Oh, I want to tell you this. Tim told me one time that he took his Imperial to a all Mopar car show, and there are 2 other guys with Imperials there like his, the 81 to 83 body style, and they had carburetors on theirs. And he walked away from his car for a while, and as he was coming back, the 2 other Imperial owners were talking, and he overheard them. And they were looking at his car, and one guy said to the other, "How do you think he got it here?" And the first guy said, "Oh, well, he must have towed it. There's no way he drove it." So, that's, even people that own cars like this, a lot of times don't trust this technology. I think that just says volumes about people's attitudes towards these things, but there are some very dedicated people that know a lot about getting this to work now. For instance, the fuel pump and the fuel tank, you can't get them anymore, of course, but there are comparable fuel pumps from other vehicles that work well enough that you can put it in there and make it work. I've also read an article or 2 about other things, sensors and stuff in the engine that you can't get anymore, but you can retrofit something else. Also, apparently in like the mid-80s, Chrysler upgraded and rebuilt some of the electronics in this, like the combustion computers and stuff. They would take them back, rebuild them, and after they rebuilt them, they were upgraded somehow, and they tended to be much more reliable than the original stuff.
So, you do think I need an upgrade?
Yes, for God's sakes, yes!
It's not at all hopeless to make this work properly, and I'm bound and determined to do it.
But before you can really start digging into the fuel injection system of this car, of course, you're going to need a working fuel system.
Well, if you want to talk about that, we will.
I see, looks like you've got the car raised up here in the
Yeah,
back.
I pulled the gas tank out of it. There is a fuel sending unit for one of these cars on eBay right now, and I wanted to know if I should buy it or not, because I wasn't sure. It's a factory fuel sender. the one that's on eBay right now, but I don't know if it's for the fuel injection or for the retrofit. If it's for the retrofit, I don't want it. And so I wanted to see what I had.
So to do that, it looks like you pulled the tank.
Yes, and I found this. This is not the factory fuel pump. So what must have happened, like I said, I haven't gotten into it yet. This is literally as far as I got, what you're seeing right here. Somebody must have, the original fuel pump must have gone bad. And so someone was like, well, I'll just take a aftermarket fuel pump and try to wire it in here and make it work.
Oh, dear God, no!
So that's what they tried to do. That's what I found when I pulled the tank. Next step is to pitch this, get in here and find out what is going on. You know, I'm pretty sure this gas tank is gonna have to be sent out and cleaned professionally and sealed and all that. Also, I gotta say, this looks very suspicious. It looks like someone replaced this grommet and put it in backwards. Every one of these I've ever seen on a Chrysler, this side goes in the tank and the other side comes out. So something's going on. Oh, it was also missing a couple of bolts up there when I took it out. Yeah, so I'll get rid of this, and I don't remember what the part numbers were for the fuel pumps that you can put in here, but I'll find out. I can find that information again. We'll get this car running the way Iacocca hoped it would back when it was a new car.
Well, Eric, I gotta say, that was a really interesting, informative, and in-depth look at your 81 Chrysler Imperial, or should I say just the Imperial?
Yeah, this car, it's not a make Chrysler model Imperial, it's its own make too. It technically is an Imperial.
And not only is it the Imperial name, but it was also, I believe, what business calls a marquee asset, meaning that it was something very specialized to the brand. It seems to me that when Lee Iacocca took over the reins of Chrysler Corp in the late 70s, that he was determined to sort of bring back that four-tiered system that they use. You know, Plymouth on the bottom for budget cars, then Dodge followed by Chrysler, and then Imperial on the very top.
This is their top-of-the-line car, their flagship automobile for 1981.
Oh, I know you mean that by the fact that this was their high-end premier luxury brand, which Chrysler was attempting to bring back into production again. And no doubt this was an attempt to bring back the glory days of the legendary Imperial of the 50s and 60s that was synonymous with premier build quality and high-end luxury appointments, and the sort of thing that made the Imperial stand out and compete with cars like Cadillac and Lincoln. So no doubt the R-body, four-door, Chrysler New Yorker was simply not able to compete in this personal luxury market.
Well, yeah, I think the personal luxury market, especially at the time, was perceived as a little bit more of a high-end thing. You know, personal luxury cars were big back then. They started getting big in the late 60s, mid-60s. You know, we kind of forget about them during the muscle car era a little bit because the muscle cars were so much more glorious in some ways, but people forget how big the Monte Carlo was when it came out in 1970, right along with the muscle cars. So yeah, personal luxury cars like this were big business back then.
It was, and that was a time, as we
even though it didn't sell well.
Exactly. I mean, in fact, I had read, according to some of the online sources that I found through Hemmings and even Vintage Car and Driver magazine reviews, that they had high hopes for this car, that it was going to sell well, they had marketed it well, they even had a sponsorship deal going on with Frank Sinatra, with the chairman of the board.
Yep.
And they were really pushing and marketing this car to the new 80s jet set. Sort of stockbroker, business executive, someone that had already been in the market for a Cadillac Eldorado or for one of the Lincoln Continentals of the earlier Mark generations.
Yep.
And this car, they put a lot of time and they put a lot of effort into creating a technologically sophisticated personal luxury car for the 80s market.
Once again, and that was all Iacocca. It's funny that you mentioned the Continental because that was his baby at Ford. That was another big success of his. Everyone thinks about the Mustang, and the Continental, I think, actually made more money for Ford, and that was Iacocca's idea. So when he got to Chrysler, you know, kind of like what we said earlier, he wanted to use their engineering to make something special. That's where the fuel injection came from. And then this was he was hoping this would be his personal luxury car success story now that he'd come to Chrysler, hoping for the same success as the Continental.
And you'd already mentioned earlier that Iacocca was really intrigued by Chrysler, Dodge and Chrysler being the engineering company, and that he wanted to tap in to those resources. And I was surprised to learn that the constant flow fuel injection system that you took us through a little while ago, that even though it had a reputation for failure, was actually designed by Chrysler's engineering team that had worked on the space shuttle program for NASA.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the exact same guys. Seems like they had a little bit higher standards for the space shuttles, but yeah, Chrysler did do a lot of cool stuff for NASA back then. I think to this day, still, here's a little tidbit for you Mopar fanatics, I think still to this day, the most powerful engine ever made by man is the Saturn rocket, which I think put out 5 million horsepower, made by Chrysler.
That's remarkable, and it really shows that with that kind of engineering and that sort of talent involved in creating the new Imperial, there was a lot of thought just put into conceptualizing, designing a car like this. In fact, I was surprised to also learn from some of the numbers that I read from Chrysler themselves, only 330 of them were painted this rather unusual light sea spray green color. So you've got yourself a pretty rare bird here.
Well, just playing devil's advocate for a moment, when you've only got 11,000 cars, I think almost all of them are going to be rare when you break it down to color and all that. But yeah, there are probably, or I don't know how many of these in this green color are left, not too many.
No, there can't be many of these cars left.
And I'm sure whatever is left is probably not as solid and as nice as this one. I definitely feel blessed to have found a nice one that I can save.
Well, Eric, I know you said that your grand plan was to resurrect the fuel injection system of this car, just like Iacocca and company had intended. But what else do you have planned for the future of this car?
Well, I want it to be maybe not a concours restoration, but a pretty darn nice restoration. That's kind of the long-term goal.
And by the time you're done, hopefully, viewers out there and fans like myself of cars of this generation are going to be able to pick up enough information that you're going to put out about the fuel injection system. Because as we know, as we've experienced, as I've experienced as a classic car owner, the thought of bringing my classic to a local repair shop and asking for service, or going to my local dealership, sometimes you roll in there and you ask someone in that profession to work on a car like this, and they look at you either with some sort of shock or disdain even, because you don't necessarily feel welcome in that situation, because you're bringing in them a car project that they say, well, we don't have access to parts like that. We've lost the body of knowledge. No one here working with us knows how to fix that car. And of course, where are they going to get the parts to fix it? So I know one of the things you've mentioned on this channel before is that we want that information to be passed along. Yeah,
one of the reasons why we're making this channel is not to show you how great we are, but to show all of you how to fix your own cars. That's why we take on weird projects like the fuel injection on this Imperial, or that 79 Eldorado, or just off camera we got a Rolls Royce with the hydraulic suspension, and that car needs shocks. So we're going to be putting shocks on that and bleeding it. We like getting into that unusual technology because I like to vindicate it. I like to show people that it's not as bad as it looks. It's not as scary as it looks. There's lots of people that work on it. If you can, well, I shouldn't say lots of people. There's actually very few. Everyone's intimidated by it, but it's not that bad. To me, because before this job, I was teaching auto repair at Baker College, and I wasn't teaching old cars. I was teaching new cars. So I know how complicated the new cars are. New cars have these CAN bus systems. They've got 2 different fuel injection systems in them, a direct fuel injection and a port fuel injection. And by the way, the port fuel injection is only there to clean the carbon off of the intake, because you can't do that with direct injection, and it causes so many problems. New cars have all these computer networks, they've got anti-theft. It's just insane. And so to me, this system, or the system in the Rolls Royce, it may be old and it's hard to find people that know how to work on it.
It's got a reputation for failure, which
yes,
could be intimidating to people.
But it's ridiculously simple compared to the brand new cars that are out there that people are fixing. If people can fix new cars, they can fix this old stuff. The worst part is finding the parts. The service information is easy to get. The service manual for the Rolls Royce, we found it online. We printed it. We got it for free. Factory Rolls Royce service information. Service manuals are out here for this.
You showed us the manual earlier.
Yeah, I showed
fuel
you
injection.
and that's not a service manual. That was a manual that was given out to the dealership technicians in the early 80s when they went to get factory level training for this system. So if the factory service, like if you're working on your own car and you get the factory service manual, which we highly recommend, by the way, because the aftermarket service information, it's not enough information and sometimes it's wrong. But if the factory service information isn't enough, see if you can find one of the old dealership level OEM training manuals that the dealership techs would have got when they were learning it from the factory. So, you know, the information is out there. Parts are a little bit trickier, but a lot of parts for a lot of this stuff is available through a network, you know. Let's say you've got an Imperial like this and you want to fix the fuel injection like we're going to. Get online, get on Facebook, meet the people that are out there that save these systems, because a lot of them have hoarded parts, a lot of them have the knowledge, and if you want to save this, they can. And in my experience, it's been so long that a lot of people have ironed out the problems for these cars. They can make them run better than when they were new. This fuel injection in this car doesn't even have any scan tool support. There's no place to hook a scan tool up to this car to talk to it, but it's all analog. You know, as long as you're decent with the DVOM and you got the service information, you can diagnose it. One of the other goals of this channel is, believe it or not, we really want to save all these cars. We want to show you how to do it yourself and hopefully give you the confidence to do it.
And we don't want people to think that they have to necessarily traverse the world in order to find a mechanic of your expertise, caliber, and experience. We want to show people that if they watch what you do and if they have confidence in themselves, they can be their own best mechanic.
And in a lot of places you have to be honest. As you watch me fix cars, I don't want you to watch me fix cars and say to yourself, oh wow, that Eric guy is an awesome mechanic. What I actually want you to think is, I can do that. Yes, you can. Probably. I mean, there are people with different skill sets out there, but if you are skilled enough to do like a head gasket on a Chevy small block, you can probably fix your own car. You know, even if you've got something weird like this, just get the service information. And another part to that is we've, seen the results of other shops working on cars, old cars, and not really knowing how. So they're willing to try to fix it, but they don't really know how because the skills are lost and the people that know how to work on them are gone.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up. Let's go ahead and take a look at our 1975 Plymouth Grand Fury Brougham and let you continue on that point in just a second. Well, Eric, I'm really glad that you brought up the point because I know you've said it before on this channel, some people should not be working on cars, especially cars of this age group. So here we have our 75 Plymouth Brougham, and by all accounts, it's had a lot of work done to it. You've done a lot of work to it, but what have you discovered over the course of us owning this car?
Well, when this car came to us, it had a digital instrument cluster in it, which it actually still does. Unfortunately, most of the original parts that they took out to put in the digital cluster are with the car, and it is on my list of things to do, which grows ever longer, to put the original cluster back in. But going around this car, I'm not entirely sure why they put the digital cluster in, but I think they did it because the sending unit and the fuel tank went bad, and rather than fixing that, they decided to put an electronic cluster in it with an aftermarket sending unit and some other aftermarket sensors around the car to talk to the cluster. And the car is just look at it. It's so clean and so factory. It's got the 15-inch wheels on it and the white wall tires and the correct interior and everything. You know, it's not like a hot rod or a custom. This is a nice factory car. So the instrument cluster really lets it down. It looks way out of place. Not only that, but it's an aftermarket cluster. In my experience, stuff like that usually is kind of cheap junk. You know, I'm just waiting for it to fail. And it's not just that. I remember reading recently, not too long ago, an article, I think it was in a Mopar magazine, about a guy that had I think it was a 70 Superbird. And for whatever reason, he wanted to drive it. And I don't remember where he lived. I want to say it was Florida. He drove it up to Alaska and back. And
I remember that.
Yeah, but you also remember, you observed it, and I was like, yeah, I agree with you. He made some upgrades to it. So he put electronic ignition in it and a couple of other things. On that trip, everything he upgraded failed. So he might have been better off, very arguably, leaving the points on it and whatever else he did to it. It would have been a more reliable car. And I know that there are people watching this video saying, that's crazy, that's impossible, points are terrible. I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I think those systems were just they're very misunderstood today. And so people think that everything that's newer technology is better. But if you actually drive these cars that way, in my experience, those upgrades, they really don't make it any more reliable. I was just telling you earlier in the same video how many Chrysler electronic ignition modules we've replaced here. We've replaced more of those Chrysler electronic ignition modules, the new ones in the kit that everyone puts on the car when they delete the lean burn. We've replaced more of those modules than we have ballast resistors here, because it's just cheap junk these days. So, you know, those old systems, if you understand them and you service them properly, I really do believe that they work better than people realize, but you have to know it.
And in order to know it, they got to have the information, and that's what you're here to share with everyone.
Yeah, the old stuff isn't worse. It's just different and I think misunderstood. And, you know, people have always been bad about maintenance. Today they're bad about maintenance. I'm sure they were bad about it 40, 50, 60 years ago too. So they think that the new systems are better because they don't have to maintain them. Well, if you maintain the old stuff, it lasts.
Uh-oh, there goes my tire.
And when it comes to finding the right individual and the right workshop is always key.
Yeah, and if you can't, like this, you know, that was kind of our point, is somebody worked on this car, and in my opinion, I think they made it a little bit worse. So watch out for people that are willing to work on your car, but maybe don't really know how. They could be making it worse instead of better.
And they might sell you on a retrofit or something else that compromises the car's history and integrity overall, just for no other reason than they tell you it's the only option. Don't think that that's always true.
Yeah, no, it's probably not the only option, which is another reason why you need to, you know, contact other people that know your car. Get in those fan clubs and Facebook groups and all that stuff, and network and figure out what you need to do and read the factory service information. And if you can't find a shop like us that specializes in this old technology, there's a darn good chance that the best person to work on your car is you, which is the point of our videos here. Just giving you the confidence and showing you, hey, this stuff that everyone else has given up on, you don't really need to give up on it a lot of times. You can probably fix it yourself.
Because only you have the passion. Well, Eric, I'm really glad that you brought up that point, especially when it came to our Plymouth Brougham, because just taking it to any repair shop and having anyone work on it may not be the best solution. In fact, the best solution may be the owner themselves.
Yeah, and I know that other people have different skill sets. You know, when I was a teacher, I did learn that some people just don't have the gift of, you know, mechanical knowledge. And I'm not saying that those people are stupid.
He's taking a jab at me, by the way.
No, I'm actually not. I had lots of other students. Yeah, you didn't have the best mechanical abilities, but, you know, there are some people that are just meant to be lawyers or accountants or surgeons or chemists or something different. So not all people you can't always teach people the mechanical stuff. They just don't have the knack for it. Like I said earlier, if you're good enough to do like a head gasket on a Chevy small block, you could probably fix stuff like this. Another thing that got me into this was the bad experiences. When I was a teenager, my '83 Chrysler Fifth Avenue was my baby. And every time I took it someplace to have someone else work on it, I was just disgusted with the way they treated me and the way they treated my car.
Davenport, get Mr. Griswold's car back and bring it back here.
And so I eventually got to a point where I was like, well, darn it, I'll just do it myself. Fast forward my life 25 years later, and here's where I ended up.
And if 16-year-old you could only see where you are now.
I think you'd be happy.
Well, that makes me happy. And I'm very happy because we have a great new project to begin working on. So we will continue with watching you dig in more and more to the guts of this 81 Imperial as we continue our multi-episode series, because this is a material girl and we are living in an Imperial world right here at Chase Classic Motors.
It's time for you. It's time for you.
It's time for Imperial, a new luxury car with everything standard from electronic fuel injection to an interior by Mark Cross.
I'm telling you that dreams come true.
It's time for Imperial, with a basic limited warranty twice as long as any other American luxury car.
Come on, baby, it's time.
Don't be late, Pop.
It's time for you.
It's time for Imperial.
So Eric, how are things going with the 81 Imperial?
Slower than I hoped, but they're moving, so that's good. And
that is good.
Considering how hard parts are to get for these cars, it's a bit of a miracle.
And now that you're moving right along, why don't we move over to the tool bench?
So you can see what I've been up to?
Yeah, let's see what you've been doing.
All right.
I know you've been hard at work on the fuel system.
So to start with, I know that almost everybody just converts these cars to a carburetor. We don't do that here because we like the goofy stuff. Literally, you know, that's my car. I would not be interested in that car at all if it had a carburetor on it. The only reason I'm interested in that car is because it's got this goofy fuel injection that has a terrible reputation on it. That's the only reason I'm interested in this car. If I have to convert it to a carburetor, I will sell it. I'm not kidding. But here's the fuel tank for that car. It was full of rust. It sat for a long time and it had rust in it. Someone tried to seal it with that red stuff that you pour into a gas tank and you slosh around. It's supposed to seal it and stop it from rusting and everything. I've never used that stuff before and I'm very dubious. So I actually took this tank to raised Radiator. They boiled it out, cleaned it up. I think they actually sandblasted it from the inside. I came over, they had a couple questions to ask me at one point because there's some interesting baffles and stuff in here that they wanted to know, you know, if it fell apart when they baked it and all that, or if they damaged it, would it be okay? Could I work around it? So I had to go there and see, you know, this tank partway through the restoration. And I remember this little divot here was actually a hole.
Hole.
I think they drilled that hole there so they could get in there and sandblast. I'm not sure, but that's what that divot is from. It was a large hole drilled right in there. And now it's sealed up with this like tar stuff. I've used this, you know, I've had this done to gas tanks before where they put this tar on it. That's how it is in my checker. It seems to work pretty good. In theory, this car could get abandoned for another 20 years. And then the next time gas solidifies in it and turns into varnish and crap, you could just clean it out real good and then just put it back in the car. So this is the original Imperial fuel injection tank, now as ready to go as it possibly can be.
It looks great.
Here's a couple problems I had. I had to pull the rollover valve out of the old tank in order to have them repair it. I broke the old one pulling it out, which happens all the time. The plastic is brittle. It's hit or miss. I've been able to pull the same rollover valve out of like gas tanks in M bodies, you know, Fifth Avenue's Diplomats and Grand Furies without breaking them, and I've done it sometimes and they just break, and there's a technique that you can do to minimize the chances that you're going to break it, but I don't know if there's anything you can do to make sure that you will not break it. So I broke it pulling it out. This one that went in there is actually out of, I think it's a part number for like a late 90s Jeep Cherokee, if I remember correctly. And I think I got the part number off of the Imperial owner's website, where they've got their website is very helpful if you've got one of these cars and you're trying to save the fuel injection, which I am.
That's not the only compatible part you told me that is going into this project.
Here's the sending unit for the fuel pump. It looks shiny because I covered it with like the POR 15 gas tank treatment to try to stop it from rusting again. When I got this car, this fuel pump here, which is not the original fuel pump, this is some aftermarket pump that someone put in that car to try to get it to run. This was mounted right about here inside the car. It was like bolted to some sheet metal inside the car. And it was, you know, drawing fuel out of here, out of this sender, which had this goofy garbage stuck on it like that. Someone had modified all of this to try to get it to work without the correct fuel pump. And they butchered things and hacked things and tore things apart, and it was just It was horrible.
Not a good situation you want to find yourself in.
I did nothing to this sending unit. This is how the fuel level sender came out of the tank in this car. Look at that, that's literally hacksawed. So this is the fuel level sender. If this was intact, there are places like Bob's Speedometer that can repair it usually, but it's not intact. There's no saving this. So
like Jason Voorhees took an axe to it.
I know, but luckily,
Machete.
Luckily, there was a sending unit for this car on eBay. I think it was the last one. So I bought it. So here it is, and it works. I actually hooked it up to the car and hooked up a good battery to the car and turned the key on, and I moved the float to make sure that the gauge would respond to it, and thank God it does. So that's the correct sending unit. New old stock, came out of a Mopar box. I had to repair the wiring harness because once again, some butcher cut everything up to make garbage work. And then there's the sending unit that has the fuel pump on it. So this fuel pump, I forget what the application is, but it's actually for a General Motors vehicle for fuel injection. The part number for this also came off of the Imperial owner's website. It's a Napa part number. It has the right fuel pressure and fuel flow for the fuel injection system in that car. And I was lucky enough to find a new old stock one in a dusty old box made in the USA, and I was delighted. But it's for a GM application, and I just have to adapt it to this gizmo here. So it's probably, let's see, I think it's gonna end up sitting kind of like that. I'm gonna make a bracket for it and bolt it in, and that'll hold it in place. This was difficult, trying to get the GM electrical connector to work up here, because once again, the guy that worked on this car before me hacked all this up, and there was very little I could do except drill out the rivets that were holding these standoffs in, and pull them out and replace them with studs and nuts and eyelets to adapt the pigtail for this pump and work in the car again. So that's what I had to do.
You had to rely on a couple of your mainstream skills for that.
Yeah, a little bit of fresh engineering. I still have to find a way to get this to meet up with that so that when this sucks in fuel, it can push it up to the engine. I'm sure I'm gonna come up with something that's not a large hurdle to jump over. So we'll figure something out there. That's easy stuff.
But that just shows you the level of commitment you have to go through if you want to bring one of these EFI Imperials back to running and driving condition again.
Well, there are people that have these cars with the fuel injection and it still works.
Unfortunately, those people are not dealing with harnesses that have been hacked to pieces.
No, this is from someone that was trying to make this work and didn't do any research, you know? He didn't go on to the Imperial owner's website and say, oh, that's how you do it, and then just follow the directions, you know? Learn from other people's experience. And he tried to do it himself and he just destroyed everything.
I'm gonna wreck it!
So now I'm trying to undestroy things.
Well, it looks like you're making good progress.
Yeah, I'm the worst hurdles, the ones I wasn't sure exactly how I was gonna get over them, I've gotten over. This is kind of small stuff left as far as the gas tank is concerned.
A big part of it was just making sure that you had the right fuel sender.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I didn't know what I was gonna do there. I was starting to think, until that showed up on eBay, I was starting to think that I was gonna have to wait for one of the other 81 to 83 Imperial owners to try to retrofit their car and try to get parts from them, or maybe wait till another one of these cars shows up at the junkyard and try to take a sending unit off of that or something. I don't know. One of these cars did show up at Pick Apart by my house a few years ago, but someone had pulled the original engine out and they put in a Magnum 5.2 or 5.9 out of a truck, and there was very little that was usable on it for stuff like this. It was pretty much destroyed already. So yeah, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. But so far we're getting there. And you know, I think I said this before, I know a little bit about that car's history. I remember when the previous owner bought that car. It ran. It didn't run well, but it ran. And that was only like 5 or 6 years ago. So, you know, I think we're gonna get there. After I get all of that done with the fuel tank, we'll put the fuel tank back in the car, and everything else that has fuel in it, I wanna clean out really, really thoroughly. So the next step after the tank goes back in, and I don't know how well you can see this. Unfortunately, because the lift is here, I can't lift the hood all the way up. If I could lift it all the way up, it would stay. I'm gonna take the fuel injection pump out and the actual like fuel lines out and clean them as thoroughly as I can, and any of the other fuel pipes going from this assembly down underneath the car. Take all that out and make it clean, clean, clean. And then I'll put gas in it and try to start it, and we'll see what happens. I honestly think that there's a good chance that at that point it's gonna run. It may not run well. We may have other hurdles to jump over, but like I said, I know this car ran just a few years ago, so the fuel system's probably not in horrible shape. And the fact that it ran but didn't run well may have more to do with the fact that it had a fuel pump in it that wasn't delivering the right pressure or the right volume for this fuel system, because some guy just, you know, grabbed some aftermarket off-the-shelf pump and tried to make it work. So.
Okay, Eric, sounds like you're making good progress, and we'll catch up with you again as soon as you've made more progress getting the fuel system sorted out and ready to go on this 1981 Imperial.
Well, I guess we have it. Fuel pump module for an 81 Chrysler Imperial. You know, a little bit, I had to come up with some stuff, but this should work.
I see you got the strap put on you talked about.
Yeah, I had to make this strap. I think maybe I'll redo it. It's a little short. I want to get this tight enough that I can get another nut on there as a lock nut. And maybe I'll put like a prevailing torque nut on there. I'm afraid of this coming apart when it's in the car. It probably won't. You know, I don't want to use a nylock nut on there because I don't know what the gasoline will do to the plastic. But a or a prevailing torque nut, or even putting two nuts on there and locking them against each other should do the trick.
Now, did you have any nuts today?
Matter of fact, I did.
And I probably overdid it a little bit with the clamps, but once again, I don't want to deal with any problems. Once this is in the car, I've actually had fuel injected cars before from this time frame, like that I've worked on for customers. Like I remember an 85 or 86 Ford LTD station wagon I worked on for a friend of mine one time, and it wasn't making power and it wasn't driving very good, and I found out that the ethanol had eaten up this little rubber connection inside the tank between the electric pump and the rest of the module, and it had fallen apart. And so with things like that in mind, and of course this car's never gonna see ethanol. I'm always gonna put ethanol free in here, but with things like that in mind, I just like to, I don't want to have any problems. So I don't know if this looks a little ridiculous on camera with all those clamps. I don't want to have any problems.
Well, that's not my problem.
Oh, it's not your problem. It's not your problem.
And of course I had to be very careful about the clamps. They come a little close to these terminals here, and those will be, you know, that is power and ground. Those are connected directly to these pins here where the electrical connector comes in. So I mean, if this pump was running and you were to short a screwdriver across that, you know, you'd blow a fuse in the car and the pump would stop working. So I had to be careful not to let those clamps touch those pins there. But other than that, you know, it's gonna, let's see, I got the rubber grommet is over there, but this is gonna sit in here. You gotta line up these tabs with these slots. There's actually a baffle, a well inside this tank. I don't know if you can see that, but this is gonna sit inside there. There we go. That's like about it right there. You know, it doesn't fit perfectly because this is a GM fuel pump and fuel sock. So it's gonna fight me a little bit. It fits up very tightly against the baffle, the well that the pump sits in, you know, to help it, you know, because if you think about it, you know, when you're low on fuel, you don't want to starve the fuel pump for gas. So especially any kind of car that's got a fuel pump in the tank, it almost always goes into a baffle so that as the fuel sloshes around, especially as it's low, the pump isn't gonna start sucking in air. And so, you know, this pump butts right up against the baffle in there.
And it looked like you had to sort of scrape it along the bottom and then sort of angle it to make it fit correctly.
Yeah, it's, you know, this is original to the fuel pump module on this car, and it sits right up against the baffle. And this just kind of gets in the way. So you almost have to kind of put it down, let it scrape the bottom, and then sit in like that.
Well, Eric, that was a really helpful demonstration. I really enjoyed how you used that hodgepodge of parts recommended by the Imperial Owners Group, and you got them all to fit together in just the right way that you were able to maneuver them inside the original fuel tank of this 81 Imperial.
Yeah, it helps, at least it helped me to take the, you know, have the fuel level sender for the gauge out so I could kind of see in there while I was putting in the fuel pump. And, you know, basically what I did was, it's the factory mounting for the fuel pump with that GM pump that the Imperial owners recommend, and then I had to make a little strap to hold it in and bolt it in and, you know, kind of rig up some other stuff to actually connect it so that the pump can send the fuel out of the sender and then up to the engine.
Yeah, you had to rely on some of your fabrication skills.
Yeah, a little bit. Fabrication is fancier than what I actually did, but sure.
To put together that whole clip to hold the pump in place.
Yeah, it really wasn't that complicated. But.
Great. Well, that's great. So now that that is accomplished and you've got the wiring and everything for the sender for the fuel tank ready to go, I guess you're ready to install it now.
Yeah, this is great. I'm feeling good about this. This has been not a long time coming. Well, actually, it kind of has been, because this is my car, so my stuff always takes a back seat while we work on customers' cars. So this would have been done a long time ago if it was a customer's car. So I've had the tank repaired for a long time. The pump is finally in it, and we're finally going to put the tank back in the car, and then we can move on to the next step of getting this car running after that.
Great. Well, let's go underneath this 81 Imperial, and Eric's going to show you how to do that. Let's get started. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's ready. Let's go. Well, I see the fuel tank.
Yeah, so everything's all set, ready to go there. Got 3 fuel hoses. This is just vapor for the evap system. This is fuel supply from the pump. This is return from the fuel injection system. I got that should be way more hose than I need on these. So I'm just gonna put the tank in place right now. I'm actually gonna leave these hoses loose for the time being because I want to try to run some denatured alcohol and stuff through the fuel lines that go up to the engine itself before I hook all this up, just to clean out anything that might be in there. I don't think there's gonna be anything horrible in there. Like I said before, I know that this car ran just maybe 5 or 6 years ago, so it's not gonna be too bad. But what scares me is I know that the fuel filters, if you've ever seen the fuel filters on one of these cars, there's 2 big filters in parallel with each other. And why they've got these big filters sitting in parallel with each other is that's the only way to flow enough fuel through there and have a 10 micron fuel filter. 10 microns is quite a bit more fine than a regular fuel filter. So if you've got one of these cars and you've got the original fuel injection on it, you need some pretty fine filters to keep the crud out of the fuel injection system. You know, that being said, I don't want to just put the tank in it, hook everything up, fill it with gas, and see what happens. I want to really clean out the rest of the fuel system, you know, from here up to the front of the car before we try to start it. 10 microns is, you know, that's a pretty fine filter. I don't think the U-shaped fuel rail needs that kind of filtration. It might, but I don't think so. I think that's more for the fuel flow sensor that's up in the fuel injection plate, if I remember correctly, is what they call it, where all of the actual high pressure pump and all of that is on this car. And so if they need a 10 micron filter to keep that sensor good and that high pressure pump okay, then this thing's got to be clean.
And keeping that fuel system clean is going to make sure that it keeps it running.
Mm-hmm, that's the idea. I am dead set on saving the fuel injection in this car. That's the whole reason why I bought it. This fuel injection system's got such a bad reputation, and I love playing with Malaise era automotive technology, bad reputation or not. But we'll find out. Maybe the car will make a fool out of me. We'll see.
Simpson, that is a rebuilt Yugoslavian engine. There isn't even a Yugoslavia anymore. Bring it back at once.
You're the boss.
Let's see how we're doing up here. There we go. Why does it always seem like if they would just make the bolts the tiniest bit longer?
Yeah, we've seen that happen a couple of times with these fuel tank brackets.
A couple of times? No, this happens every time. You know, if they were 2 threads longer, and I think, of course, because it's just my luck, this is what I get for not test fitting first. I think I may have the straps the wrong way around, which really, I mean, shouldn't be a big deal. It's not like they're different part numbers. It's just, you know, they've already taken a shape to one side. So, there we go, that one caught. There we go. You know, I have power tools. How come I'm not using them? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they are different. This one seems a little short. You know what else, though? I got a hose pinched. All right. It all started, and I'm an idiot because the straps are clearly labeled left and right. So of course, because I had a 50-50 chance of putting them on the right way by guessing, I of course got it wrong.
Murphy's Law.
Well, that's the punishment I get for not checking first.
But they are labeled, which does help.
Well,
now that we know they're labeled.
It's been a few months since I pulled this tank off, so now that I see it, I remember, oh yeah, they were labeled. But I didn't expect for it to be apart for this long. And the bolts are started, and the filler neck is, oh, it was in the hole. There we go. It didn't knock the tape off, did it?
Nope.
It looks like I'm a wreck. It's in the hole! It's in the hole!
All right, I'm gonna get my battery impact gun and finish tightening these bolts, but there mostly is. Now I've still got the old rubber fuel lines on, or hoses on the end of the lines on here. I'm gonna leave those on so when I try to, you know, clean them out, and I may end up replacing them. That honestly would be the smartest thing to do, except that, you know, the fuel lines up at the front of the car are kind of unique. I can't just make those. These ones back here, I can. But anyway, I left the rubber hoses on, the old rubber hoses on here so that when I try to clean it out, I can direct them into a catch pan and not make a mess on the floor. Because Ross will kill me.
Not if Eric kills me first. Trying to catch all this on the ground is never easy. But then again, we don't exactly have a choice because every single lift here in the shop is occupied right now.
Well, like I've said in other videos, this lift is for cars that we're making progress on. If there's something I have to take apart and it's got to sit apart for a while, then it can't be on this lift. It's got to be over there or over there, and then I got to work on it on the ground. Okay.
One fuel tank, back where it's supposed to be.
Yep. Okay, well, that's it for today. As far as this car goes. I don't have enough time to do anything else with it today. So the next thing you guys are gonna see is me cleaning out the fuel system, I guess.
Great, we'll pick that up now that the fuel tank is back in to the 81 Imperial. Well, here we see the fuel injector rails on the demonstrator fuel injection system to the 81 Imperial. What's up, Eric?
Yeah, we keep old transmission fluid around because it's got a lot of detergents in it and it's good for cleaning things. So yeah, this is the, I guess you'd call it the fuel injection rail off of an 81 Imperial. This is the one that we showed earlier where I kind of talked about how the fuel injection system works on this car. This is not off my car. This is something I found at Pick Apart, I don't know, like 12 or 15 years ago. I was at Pick Apart not too far from my house. There was a 81, 2 or 3, I don't remember what year it was, Imperial there. It had the fuel injection on it still. Obviously hadn't run in a long time. It was full of, you know, dead leaves and critter poop and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, ooh, it's got the fuel injection on it. And because this system has always fascinated me, I pulled it off and bought it and took it with me, not really intending anything other than to look at it and learn about it.
Well, when we last left off, I know there's still plenty to learn, but when we last left off, you had just put the fuel tank back in the 81 Imperial.
Yeah, I've been using this to kind of experiment with so that I didn't damage anything on my car. So I've been trying things with this to see what I can and can't take apart, what I can and can't clean. And if I screw this up, it's not as big of a deal as if I screw it up on my car.
And it sounds like it's a good thing you did, because what did you already find out with this unit?
Well, how this works is this is the high pressure fuel pump and it sends fuel through here. This thing here is a fuel flow and temperature sensor, and it senses how much fuel comes out of there, goes past a pressure switch here, and then goes from there into the fuel rail. And under normal, you know, light load conditions, just cruising, this system sprays fuel out of, I think it's the bottom injectors. Don't quote me on it. It might be the top. I don't really know. I haven't had to diagnose it yet, so I haven't, you know, messed with it. And then under high load, you hit the gas harder, and the pump kicks out higher pressure, and then you've got another set of fuel injectors here that, well, I guess you could call them fuel injectors. They're more like nozzles because there's no moving parts in them, that spray to give you even more fuel to give you the extra power. But anyway, what you're getting at is these screws are not meant to come off. And like I keep saying, I'm using this to learn so that I don't screw up my car, because as much as I love this injection system, as much as I think it's cool, I've never worked on one before. So when I saw that, I thought to myself, you know, I know that system was working not too long ago. I don't want to get too deep into it and take something apart I can't put back together. So I decided to leave that alone, and I really didn't do a super thorough clean on the fuel system on that car like I told you guys I was going to. Basically, I just took the 2 fuel filters out from underneath it. I replaced them because I bought some on eBay, they were not cheap, and I replaced the little sections of rubber hose that connect those filters to the rest of the car, and I sprayed some carb cleaner through the lines from the filters back to the tank, and then I put everything back together. So that's really about as far as I went with it. Like I said, I thought the risk was worth it to not do as thorough of a cleaning as I thought, because it was looking like I might take something apart that I couldn't put back together, and it probably wasn't necessary anyway because the car just ran a few years ago. Let me give you a quick overview of how this system works. Like I said, the low pressure fuel comes from the tank up through, let's see, that one, I think it is. Which one looks bigger to you? That one looks bigger to me, so that's got to be fuel supply. Goes up into here, high pressure pump, pushes it out there. This switch is, if I understand it correctly, it's basically just for cranking only. This switch is open when there's almost no pressure, so that when you're cranking the engine, that is basically the signal to the computer to tell it to ignore inputs from the airflow sensor. and it's just gonna run the pump fast and hard to bleed air out of the system and give the car fuel right now so it can start. As soon as that gets enough pressure and closes the switch, that's the signal to the computer that the car is running and it's time to start looking at the other sensors, especially the airflow sensor. This gizmo here, believe it or not, is actually, the name escapes me right now, but it takes the 12 volts from the car's electrical system and kicks it up to 23 volts.
Gosh, it's a transformer. That's an odd number.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not 24, because there's so many 24 volt systems in the world. I work on them at Gannett Publishing all the time, where I work. We work on a lot of systems that are 13,000 volts or 480 volts, but the computers that control everything are 24 volts DC. Why this isn't the same, why it's 23, I have no idea, but that's the way it is.
Good old Mopar, they just got to be a little bit different than everybody else.
I guess. And the 23 volts is used to run this pump, and at least the throttle position sensor is also a 23 volt sensor, which is, again, very weird. If you're used to working on OBD1 and OBD2 cars, you're used to most of your sensors being like a 5 volt reference. So that's a little weird. And then, of course, pressure comes out, and low pressure comes out of one set of injectors. High pressure comes out of both sets, and that gives you your extra fuel.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're learning right along with you, Eric.
That's the quick and sloppy of how this system works. There's also an oxygen sensor on it that doesn't, it ignores the information from that sensor until it warms up, and then the oxygen sensor becomes a very major player, as we'll learn in a moment, in input to the computer.
So now that we've been given the rundown with your demonstrator module here as to how the Imperial fuel injection was designed to work, what's been the result so far?
I'm glad you asked.
I came to the shop this morning and you said, Ross, I may have a surprise for you.
Yeah, I kept you in the dark a little bit because I wanted to surprise you, although I think you suspected.
Well, look at that. It's humming right along.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's not perfect. So I started it up once I got everything back together. It wasn't running great. And then as it warmed up, it ran worse and worse and worse until it got fully warm. And then it drove really well. And I drove it around the industrial park here. And then after a while, the right front brake caliper seized, because that's what these 80s Chrysler products do. So I actually replaced the caliper on it 2 days ago, so we can test drive it now. I'm sure the other caliper is going to go soon. It's on the way, it's been ordered. O'Reilly's was able to get the right side in 1 day and the left side in a week. So, okay. And of course, I'm replacing the brake hoses at the same time too, because cars this old, you just replace the hoses. You don't even mess with them.
But amazingly, you did not have to replace much under the hood here, did you?
No, I really did not.
In fact, you just topped off the engine coolant.
I changed the oil in it, I topped off the coolant, and that's really all I've done. We're going to take it for a test drive in a bit. Would I drive it on the road with traffic? I think it's kind of safe to. It actually performs pretty well, but I don't know how old these radiator hoses are, especially since they still say Mopar on them. I don't know how old these belts are. I still have more gaskets and hoses and belts and seals and fluids to replace before we're actually going to take this car on any kind of a drive. And yes, these tires are at least 30 years old. I'm not going to drive far on those.
You mentioned those are Arribas.
Yeah, Goodyear Arrivas. I'm sure those are not the exact tires this car left the factory with, but it did leave the factory with Arrivas. That is the original equipment tire. Now those were probably put on, sometime in the 80s or early 90s. So they're an original equipment tire, but these are not the ones that left the factory with. So
fantastic. Well, I cannot wait to get out on the road with this Imperial girl and find out what it's like to cruise around in an 81 Imperial. What do you say?
Let's do it.
That Imperial looks good on you, Eric.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm an Imperial owner. How do you like that? All right, I'll do a couple laps, warm it up a little.
This is an Imperial world.
Ooh, that's an old MSP car. Nice.
What do you say, Eric?
Nah, it doesn't want to do a brake torque. All right, yeah, it's not perfect yet, but it's driving.
Let's see how she does. What do you say, Eric? Time for test drive?
Yeah, hop in. Hop in my Imperial.
I would be glad to.
So, yes, it is not completely sorted out yet. I have to tip into the throttle, carefully, but it's just amazing to have it running. One of the things I hope you all get from this channel is I am really fascinated by the Malaise era automotive technology. You know, I've said it before, I've owned tons of Chrysler products with lean burn, and I haven't had hardly any problems with it. Have I had some problems? Yes, I've had lean burn computers, well, one lean burn computer on a 87 Grand Fury that actually did fail. But for the most part, they've been more reliable than the electronic ignition systems that people typically replace them with. We worked on that Cadillac Eldorado with the fuel injection system, the factory injection system on that. I had a lot of fun doing that. Ross has a Crown Vic that's got a variable Venturi carburetor on it that's got some drivability problems. You better believe we're going to be working on that one of these days. And to me, the fuel injection system on this car has always been like the ultimate in crazy, wacky, Malaise era technology, and that this fuel injection is 100% of the reason why I bought this car, because I want to play with it and I want to make it work. It's not perfectly sorted out yet. There's obviously still some problems, but it goes.
Clearly it goes. Even with that 2.2 or is it 2.4 rear axle?
I think the axle ratio in this car, it's a 81, is 2.2 to 1. So that's pretty pathetic. I mean, the Fifth Avenues and everything at the same time had the same axle ratio.
Pathetic.
So it's, I mean, this engine's rated at, I think if I remember correctly, 240 pound-feet of torque with the fuel injection and 140 horsepower with the fuel injection. The same engines at the same time with two-barrel carburetors were 135 horsepower.
That sucks, dude.
So not a big bump in power, but a little bit. And I'm looking forward to making this run as best it can. And I think it can be made to run reliably. I really do. I think, you know, people have sorted these cars out before. A lot of them are willing to share the information that they've learned. A lot of them have sorted parts and hoarded parts, I mean. So I can reach out to them if I need anything. And this car is old enough now. I mean, if you go to a concours event and you see older cars with weird systems like this that are still on them and still intact, they're a draw. You know, people like to see it. Think about the the Bendix electrojector systems that was available on the Chrysler products in, I think it was 1957, if I remember correctly. You know, they recalled those because they had so many problems with them. But there's still a couple of those cars left that still have the electrojector on them. And when you see one at a concours event, people love to see it. These cars, you know, this car is over 40 years old now. So
it's almost as old as we are.
Look at that. It's 69 Roadrunner or Coronet? I think it's a Coronet. That's a Coronet.
Fantastic.
He doesn't have fuel injection though, and I do.
That's right.
And I have Mark Cross leather.
And you've got a nice, comfortable ride in here.
Yeah. Oh, he stopped back there. I think he might be getting ready to do a launch. Yeah, it is comfortable in this car, isn't it? I've owned lots of Fifth Avenues, rear-wheel drive Fifth Avenues of this time. This car does ride a little bit better. It does handle a little bit better, probably thanks mostly to the addition of the rear sway bar, which the Fifth Avenues didn't have.
And boy, I'll tell you, one thing I'm noticing, I'm not hearing any rattles, any clunks. Like, you can tell there is some hefty steel in this car.
Yeah. The more I poke around with this car, the more I can tell that Chrysler really did try to make a better car with this.
It's not tinny. Oh, look at it.
Yeah.
Here's the Coronet.
We got the same,
goals today.
Yeah, we're both on test drives, I think.
Classic Mopar test drives, our shop and their shop. But only one of us has an Imperial. Must make you pretty proud, Eric.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Like I say, it's not totally sorted. It's actually running without the oxygen sensor right now. When I first got it running, I had to let it warm up all the way, and then it ran great, better than it does now. And then I think while I was test driving it before we did this video, the oxygen sensor either failed or maybe it loaded up with carbon and crud, I'm not sure yet. But once I have that working, I actually just bought another oxygen sensor for it. It's on the way. I'm not sure when it will be here. And then we'll hook it up and it should drive even better. I also kind of suspect that maybe...
How about some of these electronics? I mean, this was the first car, American car, with all digital gauges.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
And just look at this dash layout here. I mean, it's pretty special. You even got a CB radio.
Yeah, it seems to be working pretty good. There were very few options on these cars. This might be the base radio, I'm not sure, the CB. And almost everything, the only option that you paid for extra on these cars was the moonroof, which I'm glad I don't have. I've owned cars with sunroofs and stuff before. To me, they're more trouble than they're worth.
I remember you mentioning that in another video.
Yeah. They get full of pine needles and dirt and crud, and then they leak, and I don't use them anyway, so I'm glad this car doesn't have it.
But it's got everything you want.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I mean, and the interior of this car is in pretty good shape. The top of the dashboard is cooked. There are places that can refinish that, so I'm going to have that done. It's not cheap, but I can have it done. Obviously, all the fabric, you know, if you've owned a Chrysler product of this vintage, a Fifth Avenue, they were notorious for this. So that's going to have to be redone. But the leather is nice. The steering wheel's got some cracks in it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that yet. Door trim panels are nice. Dashboard seems to be working. I haven't tried the radio. Okay, seems to work. Interesting that this car does not have a power radio antenna. Every Fifth Avenue I've ever owned did.
And you even got some, is it Cartier crystal in your steering pad?
Yep, Cartier crystal.
And on the hood?
And the hood ornament, yep.
First class all the way. This was an expensive car. I think we mentioned it earlier in the episode. This may be as much as, what, $65,000 new, adjusted for inflation?
Yeah, adjusted for inflation, I'm not sure. I know it was over $18,000 in 1981. That's a lot of money.
That was a lot of money. But as you mentioned, Chrysler really did give it the old college try to build a real first-class luxury performance car, personal luxury car for the jet-set 1980s business execs.
Yeah, everyone thinks of the Mustang as Lee Iacocca's great success, but if I remember correctly, financially, Ford made more money when he relaunched the Lincoln Mark III or whatever it was, their personal luxury car. If I remember correctly, Ford made more money on that. So Iacocca kind of considered that to be his great success. So when he came over to Chrysler, one of the first things he asked is, where's our personal luxury car? Where's our car to fight the Continentals and the Eldorados? And so he brought back the Imperial, and here it is.
And often, many folks, myself included, consider this Bustleback design to be more attractive than the rival from Cadillac.
Yeah, it seems to be divided. Some people like one more than the other. I like all the Bustleback cars. I think it was a really cool styling feature. I've always loved the Cadillac Sevilles. My dad always hated them. He said it looked like an elephant sat on the back of the car, but I think they're cool.
Stay, Simba. Stand. No.
And I think this is a very attractive car too. I think this car is beautiful. And I'm really looking forward to taking this to some car shows.
Absolutely. Well, this is the first time now that it's April here in Detroit that we're actually getting some car show weather.
Yeah, we got beautiful weather today.
And you have got yourself a beautiful Imperial for pennies on the dollar.
This is so weird. I am an Imperial owner. This is this to me, being a weird Malaise era Mopar nerd, this is the ultimate. This is really cool.
And this is a golden time to be one of those owners. Prices of these cars, they are on the incline. They're being rediscovered, these forgotten classics of this era.
Well,
what a good time to be resurrecting one of these and bringing it back to original factory condition with the original factory parts.
We are kind of on the cutting edge of a bit of a shift in the collector car market, I believe. You know, people have been completely priced out of the muscle cars and things like that, exotics.
Like that Coronet we just saw go by.
Yeah, but they're realizing that you can have a lot of fun by taking something like this to a car show. You know, I've told people before, you want to have a lot of fun at a car show, show up with like a mint 80s Ford LTD, you know, Country Squire station wagon with fake wood paneling. People will love it. You can have so much fun with these kind of odd Malaise cars because they're so unusual. You know, we went to Radwood for the first time last year and we had so much fun. And those people are totally our kind of people. So maybe this car will make it to Radwood this year.
I would love to see this car at Radwood, Detroit this year.
It's perfect for Radwood,
isn't it? It is perfect. It's got style, it's got taste, it's got charm, it's got everything eccentric about the jet set 80s, and yet it's got everything we love about vintage Chrysler.
Yep.
For Lee Iacocca, he laid a bit of an egg with this car, and for reasons that, again, were not entirely predictable. This was a transitionary point in automobile technology, and Chrysler was really pushing the envelope with this car. And I think they went a little bit of a bridge too far, but once you have one and it operates, I know you've still got some more tweaks to do to this car in terms of its drivability, but overall, this is a really nice, comfortable cruising experience.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of other things too. You do your homework with a car like this. Apparently, like the warranty replacement parts for these, before Chrysler threw up their hands and said, screw it, we'll just put carburetors on them, the warranty replacement modules and things apparently were better quality than what a lot of these cars left, you know, the assembly line with. So I really do believe that this can be made reliable. I really do.
Well, so far, you are definitely showing everyone out there you're on the right track.
And I'm having fun doing it. I love working on this goofy stuff. I really do. I learn so much, and I kind of vindicate the car.
Well, let's head back to the shop and see what comes next.
Alrighty.
This has been a lot of fun. The 81 Imperial. The return of the famous luxury moniker for the Chrysler Car Company. It tried, and it failed. Spectacularly. But hey, if you're going to go down swinging, you might as well swing with everything you got.
Actually, the more I drive it, the nicer it's driving. I think it's waking up a little bit.
Well, it's definitely waking me up. I thought this was just going to be a normal routine day at the shop, but oh no, you've turned this into quite an Imperial day. Well, thanks for the drive, Eric. This was fun.
Yeah, fun for me too.
And now that test drive is completed, with mostly success. I know you said we did cut a little section out there where you had to let this car warm up a bit before we could get back.
Yeah, I did.
Back to driving it again.
We pulled it out of the shop before it was ready. I had to let it warm up a little bit. It lets me know. You know, you start it up, and if you have to kind of keep your foot on the throttle a little bit, then it's not ready. Once it can take over for itself, keep its idle speed where it needs to on its own, you can put it in gear and everything's fine. Well, mostly fine, not perfect. Like I said, it's drivable now, which is huge, but we still have some sorting to do.
If you enjoy automotive content like we do, consider subscribing to our channel or check out our website to join our VIP-only high-speed chase club for early videos and other great perks.